All right, let's move on to some other but related issues. Part of New South Wales' energy assets could soon be in Chinese hands as tensions continue to escalate, of course, with the country. Goldwind Australia, a subsidiary of a Chinese-owned company that is the world's largest wind turbine manufacturer, well, they've just received $10 million from New South Wales taxpayers, courtesy of Energy Minister Matt Kean. Tell you what, it's all about renewable energy with Matt Kean, isn't it? To discuss this and more, I'm joined by New South Wales One Nation leader Mark Latham in Sydney. Well, Mark Latham, essentially a Chinese company backed by Beijing, have got their claws into the New South Wales energy assets and $10 million from taxpayers.
Well, Peter, it's the worst possible timing because the relationship with China has deteriorated quickly. You'd now say, given the recent activities out of Beijing, it's at the point of active hostility to Australia, our troops, our Prime Minister, our national pride, with all the propaganda that's coming out of the Chinese Foreign Office. So for Matt Kean to be handing over $10 million of New South Wales taxpayer funds to a Chinese-owned and operated company, Goldwind, is a billion-dollar company that certainly doesn't need this amount of money, supposedly for a hybrid gas battery storage mechanism. It just shows that we take a big risk in having our national assets in the hands of the Chinese. You could put the Port of Darwin in that category, and certainly any money that goes from New South Wales government directly to Chinese companies is fraught with danger in the current environment. And I would urge the Minister, if he can, to recall that grant. I understand the company has got its plans in place, but we shouldn't be subsidising Chinese companies. I thought this whole renewable drive was about Australian manufacturing jobs, Australian homegrown jobs, instead of handing money over to the Chinese.
Yeah, apparently the deal was initially approved in August, but, you know, things have gone south with China since. I wouldn't have approved money going to China way back in August anyway, but I thought energy was critical infrastructure like the telecommunications sector was. That's why Huawei has not been allowed to operate into the 5G network in Australia. But, of course, that's a federal government decision. This is Matt Kean, and he's almost agreeing.
Well, yeah, we shouldn't be encouraging Chinese expansion into essential infrastructure like the power grid. These windmills and their amount of generation are remotely controlled and monitored. That's a worry. And New South Wales has an infrastructure resilience body that's supposed to make recommendations about this and related matters. So I'm asking questions on the notice paper to find out what scrutiny there is, what other Chinese companies have asset holdings in the New South Wales power grid, and to cut off any grants, any contracts, any public money that goes to them, because in the current environment it's foolhardy, it's wrong, and it's against the Australian national interest.
I want to go to this other issue too. GLADYS has ruled out decriminalising drug use in New South Wales, so she says, after those reports in the Daily Telegraph today. But she's being cute with her language here, Mark, because the AG, Mark Speakman, wasn't technically proposing decriminalisation. I mean, legally, it'll still be criminalised. They'll just get warnings and low-level fines, and they can have up to 4 a year, and then the slate's wiped clean for the next 12-month period. So for all intents and purposes, it is decriminalisation. It's certainly going soft on drugs. So what she said today, the Premier, that was all spin. And this went to Cabinet, we're told, on Monday, and it's still being progressed inside the New South Wales government, isn't it?
Well, it is. It's incredible the Cabinet could give this in principle support and try and progress it further. It's a backdoor route towards decriminalisation because they're setting up a system that won't be enforced. The first drug use is a warning. The second and third ones are what they call unenforceable infringement notices. It sounds like, you know, fining people for not voting on election day. The fine notice goes out, but no one ever tries to collect the money. So, you know, it's effectively 3 strikes. You've got drug use, serious drug use. You do it 3 times, then you've got no effective penalty in the system, and it only becomes a criminal offence on the 4th occasion. And, Peter, there's also a suggestion that the clock would be reset after 12 months. You go back to 0, like the points on your driver's licence. So this is a quasi-decriminalisation. It's a surrender on the war on drugs, and another sign that whether you're talking about green energy or now the Greens drug policy, that's all you get out of this Liberal government. Why anyone votes Liberal in New South Wales? I don't know, because all they're getting is green policies left, right and centre, and it's a betrayal of what people thought they were voting for at the ballot box in March last year.
Yeah, I don't know how other Conservatives feel about this issue, but for me, I said at the top of the show, it is a line in the sand, Mark. I mean, if the Libs go soft on drugs, they will lose me. They will lose my vote. I've never threatened that before, and I don't know that Gladys Berejiklian will particularly care. I mean, she's going down this path and she's gone down other sort of left-leaning paths on other issues, but this is a real line in the sand for me.
Well, it should be for everyone in the community because it affects everyone. If you're fostering drug habits and you've got no effective sanction against drug use in the community, then these drug habits grow. They're very, very expensive. Drugs like heroin and ice are completely horrific, antisocial, violent, dangerous. And in funding the drug habit, you see an increase in the rate of break and enters, other crimes, theft, and everyone in the community loses out. It's not just the families that suffer if they've got children on these drugs. The whole community has a law and order concern. So to go soft on drugs is to go soft on law and order across the community. It's wrong, it's ill-advised. And if Speakman really thinks this is about unclogging, uncluttering the court backlog, he's kidding himself. This is backdoor decriminalisation. The policy should be ripped up. Hopefully their party room will have a lot more sense than the left-leaning cabinet.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I think it's weak and I think it's gutless. Mark Latham, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Peter.